this question at least 3 times a day. So I thought it was time to make a video to help you understand why we're asking for the information and why it needs to be updated. So first, this video is for those folks who already have an organizational NPI number. If you currently do not have an organizational NPI number, you have probably heard that you have to have one in order to bill medical insurance. And there are 2 other videos. There's a part 1 and a part 2 on how to apply for an organizational NPI number. So check those videos out first and then come back to this one if you need to for reference. All right, so the organizational NPI number. We recognize that you have been using the organizational NPI number and your personal NPI number for many, many years in filing dental claims. I get it. You don't understand why we need to change it. Well, in theory, medical billing and dental billing and the claims processing should be the same. And the process is somewhat the same. You put in your codes, your fees, and you batch your claims and you send them electronically. Well, what happens when they get to the payers is a little bit different on medical insurance. Medical insurance payers are way more hypersensitive to medical fraud than the dental industry is. The dental industry doesn't even really use the NPI information hardly at all. There's very few companies on the dental side that really even require you to have updated information. They look at the number, the NPI numbers, but they don't necessarily pull the data that is behind those numbers. And so with medical insurance, they utilize that data way more than what the dental industry has ever even considered using. Now, I don't know if that will change in the future. All I know now is that when we're dealing with medical insurance, the taxonomy codes and the information that is associated with those organizational and personal NPI numbers is very important to medical payers. And so we want to make sure that we get that right for you so that you don't have any disruption when it comes to claims processing. So let's talk about the organizational NPI number. The first thing that we check is the legal business name. So when you pull up your organizational NPI number, it should match on the organizational name, should match the IRS document that you have. Now, what I would recommend is grabbing your IRS document and comparing that to the organizational NPI name, and it should match. If it doesn't, we are going to ask you to update the information. So that means that the W-9, your IRS document, and the organizational name on the NPPES website needs to match exactly. The next thing is your practice address. Of course, you want to have your current practice address updated. We have noticed that sometimes you all will provide us an address that does not have a suite number, but on the organizational NPI number under the address, there is a suite number. You want to make sure that there's consistency. So if you have a suite number, please make sure that it is updated in your organizational NPI profile. And then lastly, we check your taxonomy codes. Now for the organizational NPI number, you can have a couple different taxonomy codes. One, you can have clinic, multi-specialty group, single specialty group. The most common one is the general practice taxonomy code. And that code is 1223G0001X. And the description to that taxonomy code is dentist-general practice. And so when you see it says general practice, that is an indicator that it should be tied to the organizational NPI number and not the individual NPI number. We have been seeing a lot of taxonomy codes on the personal NPI number that say the general practice taxonomy code. So we need to make sure that if it says general practice, it's tied to the organization. And that's really about all the things that we check on your organizational NPI number. Relatively speaking, the organizational NPI numbers are fairly new to a lot of dentists. They're just now starting to understand that they need to have an organizational NPI number. And so those have been recently updated. Okay, so now let's talk about the one that causes the most confusion, which is the personal NPI number. Again, we're not asking you to change the number. We just need you to change the information. And the best analogy I can give you is your driver's license. So on your driver's license, you have your address. If you move, you go to the DMV and tell them that you have a new address. They don't change your driver's license number. They just change the address and update the information. Same concept with your organizational or your personal NPI numbers. We're just updating the information. Those numbers don't change. Now, on the individual NPI number, we focus on the address, making sure that the primary practice address is what you have provided for us and is updated. If you are a provider that goes to many different practices, you're going to want to have each practice location listed under your personal NPI number. So you'll have a primary practice location and then you'll have secondary practice locations. So it's important to have all those locations on your personal NPI number. And then the one thing that we do check that we see the most errors with is the taxonomy code. So the taxonomy code for a general dentist needs to be 1223 00000X. So that's 1223 with 5 zeros and an X. The description for that taxonomy code is dentist. No general practice, just dentist. That identifies the person. And so therefore it should be attached to the personal NPI number. You also could have specialties. So if you are a specialist, you have a taxonomy code for oral surgery or endodontics, periodontist, etc. So you have your specialty taxonomy codes in addition to the dentist having their own individual taxonomy code. Now, why is it important and why do we have to change it? Well, let's talk about the address. I'll give you an example of something that happened a few years ago and caused us to really implement this change of making sure that the NPI information was updated. Again, we've never really had an issue with NPI information on the dental side. And so when you start billing medical, it kind of opens the doors to finding out new information and how it's used when it comes to the medical payers. So I had a doctor that was in the Northeast who was not getting any reimbursements. And so she had been filing medical insurance for a short amount of time, but long enough to start getting claims paid and started receiving some checks. And so she noticed that one payer was showing that she was getting paid and the EOBs were showing that she was supposedly getting checks, but she wasn't getting the checks. And so after further investigation, she came to realize that they were sending the checks to the address that was on her NPI profile. And we found out that what happened was that this particular payer basically will pull a subset of the claims and they will use the NPI number, that's the provider NPI number or the personal NPI number, to send reimbursement checks to as a cross-check to make sure that there's no fraudulent activity happening. So even though the claim went out with the correct address, the correct practice address on it, because they pulled this subset, they used the NPI number to mail the checks to. So it was going to a practice that she had not worked at in over 10 years. So there are times where medical insurance payers will do crazy things like that that we might not know about, or that it might not ever happen, or when they're going to implement something like this. Not every state does this. So we basically credential you to the most restrictive requirements. And so that's why we get your address updated and encourage you to get your address updated so that if there are reimbursement checks and something like that happens where the insurance company pulls a subset, that they'll utilize the NPI number with correct information. So it's kind of a crazy situation. Again, it's not the norm, but it does happen. And so that's why we credential you to the most extreme case. The other thing that happens is utilizing the taxonomy code. Now, the taxonomy code for Blue Cross Blue Shield in some markets is the way that you get through the adjudication system. So they have built code that if a claim comes in electronically with a taxonomy code of 1223G0001X, remember that's the general practice taxonomy code, that if a claim comes through with that taxonomy code for the provider, they immediately reject it and say that that provider is not authorized to perform treatment because in the eyes of the payer, that is a general practice organizational NPI number, not a personal taxonomy code. Okay, so they would reject, and they did reject the claim, and would not allow it to process through the adjudication system because of the taxonomy code. So again, we credential to the most extreme. So we need to make sure that on the personal NPI number for a general provider, a general practice provider, it was 1223 and then 5 zeros and an X. And again, the description is just dentist. Now, you can have other taxonomy codes, meaning if you are an oral surgeon or if you're an endodontist or any other type of specialty, you can also add those taxonomy codes and they will pass through the adjudication system. It's just the 1223G that stops you from processing through the adjudication system if it's on your personal NPI number. So we want to make sure that your claims process. All right, so I think that is hopefully going to clear things up for you. Again, how you update this information is going to be reaching out to the NPPES website. At the end of this video, I will have the web address as well as tech support so that you can reach out to them and get the information updated. We will also put it in your credentialing portal for you to make sure that you get updated. So I hope this clears things up. We really do want you to be able to process claims very quickly and efficiently. So thank you so much, and let me know if you have any additional questions.